All right, so thank you for tuning in. My name is Stephen Palacini, and I'm going to show you how to do an offer of employment in the employer portal. This will be necessary for anybody doing startup visa or any kind of LMIA exempt work permit. So you're going to find the IRCC employer portal, and I like to use GC key. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to actually create one for my company here, SJP Immigration Inc. Actually, I've got to create one. So we need to sign up. So I accept, let's go SJP Immigration, if I haven't already used it. Now you want to create a password here. So okay, and it fits everything on the password checklist. Now, you're going to want to create a recovery question. This is if you forget everything. So I'm going to obviously blank these out. Okay, now you have the option to include an email address. So in here, I'm going to include an email address that you can contact me at. This is what you would want to use if you have a business email address and you're the employer doing the offer of employment, or if you're self-employed and you have an email address and you're doing this as a formality because you need to have an offer of employment number when you're applying for self-employed, such as C11 or the new startup visa A77. It's very important to know that when you won't be able to get the employer portal registered unless you have a CRA business number, which means you have a business that's incorporated in Canada. So here I've received a confirmation. There we go. There we go. So now I've created this GC key, okay? And we're going to accept, welcome to the IRCC portal. You will not have received a personal identification number. That would be in the case of if your employer has an account and then they want to give you access. In this case, I'm not applying as an authorized paid representative portal. I already have one as a licensed consultant. There's also designated learning institution. No, I'm not a school. There's employer portal. So this is what you're going to want to employ, the employer portal. Are you a branch of an organization? Are you trying to re-enroll? No, I'm not. This is the first time I'm enrolling. So now here you can create your security questions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create my own security questions. And then I will cut the video. So I've created all my security questions. Now it says, what would you like to do? And I would like to enroll as an employer. Okay, so I'm going to do this specifically for the example of an employer in the case of startup visa. So you would put in, who would the user contact be? If you're self-employed, so you're applying for C11 exemption, or A77 as a startup visa applicant, you would put in your last names, your first names. Okay, so in my case, I would do this. My job title is CEO and founder. Here's my telephone number. Okay, and business legal name, that is the business legal name. The operating name is the exact same, but they make it required. So I'm going to put this here. It is a Canadian organization, and that's why they then ask for this thing called a Canada Revenue Agency number, which I do have. Add the CRA business number, which is now usually when you create a let's see what they have here. Okay, they have an issue with the dots. Okay, fine. They have an issue with something else, North American telephone number. So here, you need to have what they want. So this is what they want. Foreign telephone number must be prefixed with plus and remains formatted as entered. So yeah, in this case, because it's a Canadian number, I'm going to format it as such, and I'm going to put in the hyphen as they've requested. And I think they want a space there. I agree. This is why I recommend that your consultant, even if your consultant is helping you with your offer of employment in the portal, it's important that the employer or whoever is doing this is able to sign and declare and answer, transmit, and usually you'll be enrolled within 5 minutes, okay? And you'll get an email, and it's going to cross-reference with this data. There's this new website, Canada Business Registries. You can find here SJP Immigration Inc. Let's look for it, and there you go. It's got my business number. That's my CRA business number. It's an Alberta Business Corporation. It's active. Registered office is in Calgary. So you can find this for any Canadian employer, really. But when you create the business, you should automatically get a CRA business number. And within the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'll receive confirmation that it's been approved. And then I'm going to tune back in and show you guys within 5 minutes of creating the employer portal, it was approved. So the email is really quite simple. It literally just says your enrollment is complete. Your account is now active. It comes from do not reply at cic.gc.ca. It happened literally less than 5 minutes after I had created this. So now we can refresh this if it's still logged in, and it's not. Okay, so employer portal, IRCC. Here we go. Continue to GC key. Now you log in. All right. I accept. Where was I? And so here you go. So now here's what your employer portal looks like. Stephen Joseph Palestini's IRCC portal account. This is for the employer portal. So what you're going to want to do, this is for anybody who needs to submit an offer of employment that is LMIA exempt. So that is anything in the International Mobility Program. Could be self-employed, C11. It could be intracompany transferee, C12. It could be startup visa, A77 now. So what you're going to want to do is submit an offer of employment. And if you don't want to do this part, you can just create it to this level, okay? And then hand off the credentials to your consultant or get on a screen share with your consultant or your lawyer, and they can guide you through it. That's typically what I like to do with my clients. But submit an offer of employment, okay? So I want to show you guys on the back end, that's the whole point of my YouTube channel, is to show you what it looks like, to give you some insight into, okay, the LMIA exempt offer of employment, what does it look like? How do we create one? And this is it. This is what you're going to have to do to get the LMIA exempt offer number. Business information. So here is, and you want to put in a business telephone number. I believe you are able to put in a foreign number here. So you would put, let's say, 91. Let's just see if that works. I mean, validate. It doesn't appear they had any issues with it, but you want the business telephone number. Here you're going to put the business address, okay? So this would be where your company was incorporated. That would be called the records address. It could be where you intend to work. So business address typically is different than mailing address. Mailing address is where you can receive mail. That's why if you incorporate a company in Canada, it's good to do it and then have just like a virtual address somewhere to start at a minimum. So you have, a mailbox with a co-working space, or you've incorporated at a law office. Okay, so this is where you would put in your business information. Here you've got your type of business. So if you incorporated, you're incorporated. Okay, partnership in Canada refers to where it's like a sole proprietor, but you have an equal partner or three different partners that are all basically it's like a sole proprietorship. It's a whole different type of legal structure, but usually you're going to be incorporated. So you would select incorporated here. If you're coming in on C11 because you are part of a franchise, then yes, you would put franchise here, and then you put the name of the franchise head corp. If you're not a franchise and you're coming in because you started your own software development company, then you would answer no here. Business details, they want a web address. This is something that is required. So hopefully you have at least a domain purchased in Canada.ca domain, or you would link it to something at .com that is your current web address, or the web address that best represents the business. Date the business started. This is usually best represented as the date of incorporation. So if you incorporate a company in Canada or in one of the provinces, you're going to get a date of incorporation. Describe the principal business activity. You will be limited, obviously, with these in how many characters you can put, but describe the principal business activity. This would be 1 to 2 sentences. If you're a restaurant, or a restaurant, for example, you can look at the North American industry classification and then look at what the wording is for restaurant if you want to be really specific. And you would go and you could look at it, maybe PDF format, and it's just, you could find your industry here. So just like occupations have NOC codes, industries have NAICS codes. But that's just basically where you would put in the principal business activity. So if you're a software development company, you would put the principal business activity, 1 to 2 sentences. Number of employees for startup visa, for C11, usually you're under 100. Gross revenue. This really comes into play on the Canadian company. So even if you have a company overseas that's like 50 million, but now you're starting a Canadian company, look at the Canadian company. If you haven't even got operations off the ground and you have no revenue, you would just put less than 30,000. Almost everyone for startup visa puts less than 30,000. This only main distinction here between 30, and why do they make this between 30 and then 30 to 5 million, is because at 30,000 you need to start reporting GST. But for most startup companies, in fact, almost all startup companies where you haven't even established operations yet in Canada, you've only, let's say, incorporated, most people will be less than 30,000. If you are at 300,000, or you're, let's say the company is more than a year old and you have been generating some revenue, then you would put the gross revenue in there. So the primary contact is the person who will be contacted to IRCC for further information. In this case, it's going to be, I'm doing an employer portal strictly this video is for anybody who's running their own company, a startup company. So in this case, you're going to put yourself, obviously. Job title, CEO and founder, contact phone number. It's the same as the business number in this case. Contact email address would be the one. And then you can validate, and it'll let you know if all the information is correct. Obviously, this isn't going to say complete because I haven't put in any of the information. Then there's another section called foreign worker, which, yes, as a startup visa applicant, you're going to put in your last name, your first name, exactly as it's shown on your passport, okay? Because they're going to cross-reference this, the name of the foreign worker that's on this offer of employment with your work permit application. And you can check this box if you don't have a first name. So if you only have last names or family names, obviously you put in your gender, date of birth, your country of residence. So this would be where you're currently living, okay? Citizenship, that's in, obviously the country that's on your passport, and then you put in your passport number. That's all the information that's required for the foreign worker section. Okay. Now, job details. This is where I guess the most complexity lies. So LMI exemption title, what is it? Startup visa used to be A75. They've now changed it to A77. And it doesn't appear that they've reflected that change. There it is. A77, startup business class. Okay, so they have. In the past, it was A75, which was very confusing. And you can see that there's a big legal case right now because of a lot of applicants that were refused. They erroneously put C10 or C11 because, yeah, it does appear that if you're a startup visa applicant, you see this R205A, you see significant benefit. That's what it tells you in the guide to apply for. But then when you dig deeper onto the website, you do come to the realization that in the operation manuals, they code it as A75. However, that's no longer the case, and they've added this new one, A77, Startup Business Class, Work Permit. So that's what you would put for the LMI exemption title. Where to know where your LMI exemption title would be, you can find it from these codes. These should be okay, so this is where they made some changes recently. So this is why I want to highlight this in the video. We can go look at down here. You're going to find this business owner still the same. Self-employed business owner C11 is now C11. It's the same. But they're going to have in here startup business class was A75. It is now A77. Okay. How you meet the requirements of the labor market impact, make sure to provide as much detail as possible. In here, you would explain, you would take information from the commitment certificate in the case of startup visa. In the case of C11, you would explain why you meet the exemption requirements. So how do you find those? You go into C11, and a lot of these exemptions are listed here. They talk about documentary. So you would say degree of ownership in the business. Essentially, a lot of these things will come from your submission letter if you're submitting a submission letter. But they want it in your own words how you meet the requirements. So you'd say, well, as a business owner, I qualify under C11, which is a self-employed work permit, somebody who can create significant benefit. I've submitted with this application, a business plan that shows how I'm going to create Canadian jobs that has significant economic benefit. By creating these jobs, I've shown that I have the background to do this. Keep in mind, you will be limited to like 150 characters here. So you might want to keep it to a few sentences, or maybe not 150 characters, but it is limited. So, in the case of startup visa, for example, I don't want to ramble too much, but this is pretty much the most customized part of the form, is you would talk about how you meet the exemptions of the labor market, the LMI exemption. You have a valid commitment certificate, You meet the proof of funds requirements, all the program requirements for issuance of a startup visa certificate. You, like I said, have the commitment certificate, you have the proof of funds requirement, you have the support of a designated incubator that is designated on the day you've applied by the minister. And then here's where you would put in your job title. So you're coming to Canada as CEO and founder, or maybe you're coming as a chief technology officer. So you would put in your job title here, your NOT code. These are obviously all the new NOT codes, and they still, do they have 888? They do. They just added another 8. So entrepreneurs, temporary residents. So this is what you would do for startup visa. It's always been 8888 in the past. I want to just double check unless they've changed the guidance on that, because it seems, they are putting the word temporary residence in there, which startup visa program is you're ultimately applying for permanent residence, so it seems a little bit confusing. But in here, you would put the NOC that best describes the duties that you'll be doing in Canada. So please provide the address of the primary physical job location. This can be different than your business address. This could be if you were working, let's say, from a co-working space, but you have your registered business address at a law office, or a post office box for your business address, or UPS store, something similar. And just go through it and then answer everything truthfully. Will you perform at more than one location? Yeah. The second physical job location, you might already have your home identified. Typically they're looking for business addresses in this case, but I would just want to disclose everything where you're planning on working. Expected duration of employment. This is, again, subjective. You can say at least 1 year. You could put 2 years, you could put 3 years, indicating days, months, or years, the total duration. Main duties of the job. A lot of this you can take and mirror from your commitment certificate. Minimum education requirements for the job. This is, you're going to want to cross-reference that with for an entrepreneur, it's flexible. You can be an entrepreneur with only a high school education. If you're applying for something like the NOC code for, let's say, a senior manager of financial communication to other business services, probably if you go look at this in the job bank, they're going to say a degree in finance or accounting is usually required. Okay. This is where you can put in other training, experience, and skills required. And then this is just, you don't require licensing to be an entrepreneur necessarily, but this is where you would put in if you were coming as a self-employed doctor or something. So there are employer compliance fees. Yes, you will be paying the employer compliance fee. The employer has to pay, okay? And the primary contact of the person, you would put yourself on this as well. Now, finally, wage and benefits. This is where you would put in the hours and the wage and Canadian dollars per hour, or alternate compensation schemes. In startup visa, you're allowed to use alternate compensation schemes. In C11, it's very subjective. You might already have an idea of how much you want to pay yourself as somebody who's self-employed. And then here you can put in benefits that you're offering yourself as the employer, if you are at all, but you don't necessarily need to fill in any of these. You don't need to have benefits. So as you can see, the only thing that is required is this. Even though it says the benefits are required, you don't actually have to put, you could put not applicable or whatever. And once you've completed all this, then you'll be able to transmit it. So once this is complete, it's green. 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 You're able to transmit the offer of employment. So I find it most useful to get my clients to create it like this, and then I go in and I help them fill in the information, and they transmit it as the employer on their own behalf. Now, one final thing is once you then transmit this and you pay the employer compliance fee, which is I believe it's $230, is you will receive an official receipt from IRCC, and on that receipt you'll also get in your employer portal the offer of employment number, which starts with A. Just like an LMIA number, an LMIA exempt offer of employment starts with A, and then it, followed by, I believe it's 7 or 8 digits. I'll update this video when I get one, and I'll redact it for you guys so you can see what it looks like. But then you get the offer of employment number in your portal, and you get a receipt as well, the proof of the employer portal payment receipt. And it's important that you also submit that receipt as proof with your application. So make sure that when you do make payment, you take screenshots. And obviously I can't go through that process right now because it's just I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. But in the coming days, when I do have to do one, I will be sure to post what it looks like, a redacted copy, so y'all can see. So thank you very much.